Hello, photography enthusiasts. Welcome to this comprehensive YouTube tutorial on understanding aperture or aperture value in photography. In my previous video, I taught about 3 essential settings to master as you start your photography journey, or if you already started and want to be better. Today, we will be diving into one of the fundamentals of photography. In this tutorial, I'll guide you through one of the key elements that make up a perfect photograph. Grab your camera and let's get started. Today, we will begin with aperture. We will break down what aperture is, how it affects your photos, and provide practical steps for mastering it. Before we get started, do well to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification so you don't miss out on any tutorial. Let's begin with the definition of aperture. Aperture refers to the size of the opening in your camera lens through which light enters. It determines the amount of light that reaches your camera sensor. It's often represented by f number or f-stop. Hence, we have f1.2, f1.4, and so on. A lower f number like f1.8 indicates larger aperture, while a higher f number like f16 represents a smaller aperture. Aperture and depth of field. One of the key effects of aperture is on depth of field. A wider, which is lower f number aperture, results in a shallow depth of field, blurring the background and isolating the subject. A narrow, also higher f number aperture, increases the depth of field, keeping more of the scenes in focus. Aperture and exposure. Aperture also impacts exposure. A wider aperture lets in more light, suitable for low light conditions, while a narrow aperture limits light, ideal for well-lit scenes. You can balance exposure by adjusting other settings like shutter speed and ISO. Aperture and auto mode. If you're a beginner, you can start with auto mode. Your camera will select the aperture for you, but you will miss out on creative controls. Thus, you don't want to rely on auto mode, but learn how to manipulate the settings to achieve creative results. Aperture priority mode. To adjust the aperture, set your camera to aperture priority mode, denoted by the letter A or AV on your camera dial. Here, you control the aperture and the camera adjusts the rest. It's a great way to get started. Then experiment with different f numbers to see how it affects your photo look and feel. Use a wide aperture, also known as low f number, for dreamy bouquet portraits. Choose a narrow aperture, which is high f number, for sharp landscapes. Understand depth of field. Depth of field, or DOF, is achieving a blur background while your subject stands out. Visualize how your chosen aperture affects depth of field. Remember, wide aperture blur the background, while narrow apertures keep more in focus. Low light situations. In low light situations, use wide apertures to let in more light. Be mindful of resulting shallow depth of field. Focus accurately. Well-lit scenes. For well-lit scenes, go for a narrow aperture. This is ideal for landscape, architecture, and group shots where you want everything to be in focus. Here are a few practical tips to get started with in aperture. 1. Check your lens for the lowest and the highest f number it supports. If you are using a kit lens, your widest aperture should be 3.2 or 3.5 thereabouts. If it is a prime lens of 1.8, then it should be around 1.8. 2. Use a tripod for steady shots with narrow apertures in low light. 3. Practice. Experiment and review your shots to see how aperture affects your images. To wrap it up, mastering aperture in photography is all about understanding its effect on depth of field and exposure. Start with aperture priority mode. Experiment with different f numbers for creative effects, and remember to adapt your aperture to the specific shooting conditions. That is it for our tutorial on understanding aperture in photography. I hope this has shed more light on the subject. If you have any questions, do well to ask in the comment section and you will get a response. In our next video, we will talk about the next fundamental settings in photography. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more photography tutorials, and keep practicing to take your photography skills to the next level. Thanks for watching and happy shooting.